My name is Lawrence Price, and today I want to share with you our final message in the series on the book of Esther. Today we're going to go from Esther chapter 9, verses 26 through 27. And the theme of this message is leave nothing to chance, leave nothing to chance, trust God. So Esther 9, verses 26 and 27 says, Wherefore they called these days Purim after the name of Pur. And therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year. So, in our last message, we talked about how the fall of Haman and what resulted in all of that, how Esther was able to really step out in faith and from encouragement for her cousin Mordecai to go before the king and really just trust God in that situation, putting her life on the line, and that how the king responded once he realized what had happened, and seeing how when he caught Haman, in his opinion, looking like he was attacking Esther, how he basically had him killed on the same gallows that Haman had prepared for Mordecai. So we're now in this point where in the story when you see that Haman has now died, but there's still the decree that had already gone out, and so there is something that has to be taken into account for that. And so what I'd like to share with you today is from this period from where Haman is executed by the king until how all the Jewish people in the Persian Empire were saved. The Jewish people still celebrate this holiday based on the story that happened here in Esther, and it's called Purim. So Purim is a 2-day festival recognizing what happened here and God's miraculous deliverance of the people. The holiday Purim comes from the word pur, which means to cast lots, and it's in reference to how Haman selected the date for when the Jewish people were supposed to be killed by the decree that he had the king send out. So the idea here is that Haman casted lots in order to select the day, which is in contrast to what we see how Mordecai and Esther kind of walk their life. Haman made a decision based upon casting lots. Mordecai and Esther really make decisions based upon faith. And I think it's just really interesting and very powerful that the people in this story decided to name the holiday in a way to remind them of making sure that they chose faith. It is off, they could have made the holiday or named the holiday to talk about God's sovereignty, or maybe unity, or even the idea of vengeance. But what they made a point to do was to remind themselves of the importance of living their life based on faith as opposed to based upon chance. And I think that's just a very powerful reminder for each and every one of us. When I think sometimes in our lives we do not necessarily think about that the opposite of living a faith-driven life is living a life where we're casting lots, where we're living based upon chance. Let me give you an example from my own personal life. Several years ago, I decided I would say to cast lots, or at least I decided not to make a decision based upon faith. My wife and I were expecting our first child, and we had made a decision as a couple that she would stay at home with the baby. She wouldn't return to the workforce after giving birth to our first son. And so we were living in Austin at the time, and life was really pretty good for us. But I really wanted to make sure that I made more money. And so it worked out to where I received a job offer to another company where I was going to be making a lot more money. The big difference, though, was that instead of staying in Austin, this job would take us all the way to New Jersey. And I made the decision just based upon my own thinking and rationale. I didn't really pray on it. I didn't pray on it at all. And I thought on it. I didn't really think about it too much either, but it definitely was a decision based upon me acting out of faith. It was a decision based out of everything but faith. So I left my wife and son to go to our newborn son to go work at this job in Jersey. She stayed behind in Austin to sell the home. And by the time she got the house sold, I realized just how horrible, just how miserable I was in this new job. And so I was really distraught about what we were going to do. And the job market had been really hot. And so I was able to, when I landed that job, so I felt like, well, I could quit this job and find another job. What I didn't realize is that we were at the beginning of the Great Recession at that time. And so it was very difficult. So I quit the job, and it's very difficult for me to find another new job. So here I am. We sold our house in Texas. We have a newborn, and now I'm looking for work. And so the first job that really became available for me was in Massachusetts. So I moved my family to Massachusetts, and we spent 2 winters up there. But neither one of us had family in Massachusetts, didn't have any friends. And it was cold. We're Texans, right? And there came a point where my wife just said, just pray about it, just trust God. And I began to pray and just really trust God. And within a matter of months, literally, I had a job offer bring me back home to Texas, back to even closer to family than we were when we were in Austin. And our life has just really flourished ever since. And to me, the reminder for us as I kind of share this story, and as we kind of talk about these concluding chapters in the book of Esther, is that when we step out and try to make decisions and the things that we want to do on our own, that is just like Haman casting lots. What we really want to do is live a life that is based upon faith, where we go before God and we seek His face in all the decisions that we're looking to make. So, kind of want to start here talking in chapter 8, where you have to recognize that God's people have to fight. So again, just as Haman had passed away, there was still this decree out, where the decree had been sent out that on this particular date, that all the Jewish people within the Persian Empire would be killed. And so you have to remember, in the Persian Empire, once a decree has been sent, it cannot be undone. And so when Esther, she decides to go to the king and kind of raise this as an issue, because not only are the Jewish people's lives in danger, her life is still in danger. He made a decision that he would write another decree. And this decree, so he couldn't write a decree to stop the process, but he wrote a decree basically giving the Jewish people the right to defend themselves. In addition to that, all of Haman's property, his estate, all of that was given to Esther and Mordecai, and it was under Mordecai's authority. And also Mordecai had been given basically a governmental royal position within the empire. So in addition to the people being able to defend themselves, they now had Mordecai, who was able now to marshal all of the royal assets and resources in order to help them to fight. And, so now the Jewish people are in a position where they're able to fight and resist the enemy, and they are going to be able to do what they need to be able to do. I think what you would want to see sometimes in this story, as you're looking at it or thinking through it, is that all of a sudden the enemy is just going to evaporate, that they would just go away, that there would be no one that the Jewish people would have to fight. But that's not what happens. What God does is that He delivers them by giving them the resources to fight. I think sometimes as Christians, we hope and think that the enemy that we face is just going to magically just disappear. But that's not how God delivers us. He delivers us by giving us the resources. He gives us by giving us the capacity to overcome our enemy. And like I've shared in previous messages on this particular book, our enemy is our flesh. Our enemy is not another person. It's not something that is abstract. It is our flesh. It is our carnal nature. And the only way that we as Christians can overcome that enemy is by fighting. It is by marshaling the resources that we have through Christ to overcome our flesh. And that if you're thinking that you can win this battle against your flesh without ever having to fight, then you're mistaken. You're going to have to put in the work. You're going to have to exercise your faith in order to really achieve the things that God wants you to do. So something interesting happened as you kind of proceed through the rest of chapter 8. The Jewish people begin to celebrate. So they're in this period between before the actual battle is going to take place. So they're in this period where this new decree had come out. All the resources that they needed in order to have victory had been materialized. and before the actual victory and the fighting that was going to take place would actually come about. So they're in this in-between period where they know that their victory is going to be assured, but the victory hasn't become a reality yet. And so what do? They begin to celebrate. They celebrate in anticipation of the victory. They have a feast, and they're just enthusiastic and grateful. And what was so amazing about it is that as they're celebrating, people who weren't Jewish wanted to join them. That there's literally people converting to their faith, converting to their beliefs because they see that God is with them and that they're going to be victorious. You and I are kind of living in that same space. We're living in this space where God has done something through his son that has ensured our victory. The reality, the manifestation of our victory hasn't come about yet, but we're still living in this space between where we know by faith that our victory is assured, but the reality, the manifestation of it hasn't happened yet. And the challenge that this particular part of the story kind of challenges, puts out there for us is how are we reacting to it? Are we celebrating in advance of the victory? Are we celebrating and just recognizing that we believe, even though it hasn't manifested yet, that we are going to be victorious? And if we are living that way, people will come to know Christ because of it. People will want to convert and follow the same God that we follow because they see in us that, that victory is actually going to take place because of the faith that we're exercising, because we're optimistic. What's interesting as you kind of get to chapter 9 and you get to the concluding verses within the book of Esther, it's really interesting. So on the first day of the fighting, there was fighting throughout the entire empire. 500 enemy people were killed just in the capital city alone. And then Esther requested a second day because they felt like not everybody had been killed. 300 more people in the capital city were killed, in addition to all the people throughout all the provinces. In addition to all the people that had been killed, the enemy that had been killed in the capital area, all of Haman's 10 sons were also killed as well. And so Purim was instituted as a holiday to recognize this. The first day to recognize the victories that happened in the provinces, and then the second day to recognize the victory that happened in the capital city. When you read the book of Esther, it's really unclear who's writing it. It's some historians, some theologians believe that this was probably written as a chronicle to document Mordecai's rise to authority and his leadership position within the government. You notice that God is never really mentioned in the book, even though we see Mordecai and Esther's faith, and that is really apparent throughout the entire narrative. What really makes this book kind of interesting is the way that it ends. If you're thinking of it as a chronicle, you would think that it would end with Mordecai's death. But it's written as if Mordecai's work is just ongoing and that is just perpetual. We know that Mordecai is not living. He didn't live eternally. That he eventually, died and was buried, even though the book doesn't chronicle that. I think the thing that's important for us as we think about this is that the work that God has called each and every one of us to is everlasting in a sense, that it is something, the work of the body of Christ, the things that God has called us to, it's ongoing, it's perpetual. It is something that God is going to be working in us and through us, both in this life and in the next. It is something that is eternal. When you see this victory that Mordecai and Esther have over their enemy by trusting in God, they trusted that God was going to do something in them, and that work and that victory was going to be ongoing. One last thing to kind of mention on this battle, when the king made his decree to tell the Jewish people that they had the ability to defend themselves, he also gave them the authority to basically plunder their enemies as a part of the fighting. However, the people chose not to do that. They didn't want anyone thinking that they were fighting for riches. They wanted people to know that they were fighting for their own freedom. You might be seeking God today. And you're not seeking God because you want status. You're not seeking God because you want riches or wealth. You want to seek God in his face because you want freedom. You want freedom from sin. You want freedom to live righteously. You want the freedom to know that comes with knowing that your salvation is secure. I just want to remind each and every one of us that the freedom that the victory that we're looking for is victory over ourselves, is victory over our flesh, that we want to just continue just to be a people of faith. And I believe the story of Esther reaffirms all those things, that the more that we're able to walk in our faith, the more that we're able to trust in God, the more victory that we'll experience in our life. And that victory is something that you can celebrate even before the victory becomes manifest. And it is a victory that will draw and attract other people to want to follow God in the same way that you are. I hope that this series has been a blessing to you. I hope today's message has been a blessing to you. May God, my God, keep you and just continue just to study His Word. Thank you.